On a freezing, rain-soaked curb, an injured woman can't stand. A Mafia boss hits the brakes, lifts her like she weighs nothing, and says one thing: "You're safe with me." But safety in his world has a price. She filmed something she should never have seen. A fire, a secret deal, a smiling city hero who also happens to be her stepfather. Now masked men stalk hospital halls, bullets kiss glass, and she's locked in a penthouse where the only rule is stay alive by staying close. The rival crew wants her gone. Someone inside his empire wants him broken. A sniper's shot forces them into a storm-lit safe house and a bond that feels like a vow. When she's taken, the city holds its breath. He brings war to the warehouse. She holds the one file that can burn them all. If he saves her life, can she save his soul? Or will the truth they unleash destroy them both? Through half-lidded eyes, Monroe watches shadows dance across the pristine white ceiling. The medical suite hums with quiet efficiency, monitors beeping softly, rain tapping against bulletproof glass. Her ribs throb with each breath, a constant reminder of hands that had grabbed too roughly, of pavement that had scraped skin raw. The cashmere coat still carries Cade's scent, sandalwood, and something distinctly masculine. She burrows deeper into its warmth, fighting the urge to panic as fragments of the night flash through her mind. Running footsteps on wet concrete, the metallic taste of blood, a camera hitting the ground, lens shattering. Outside the door, Cade's voice remains steady, controlled. "I want every security feed within 10 blocks. Traffic cameras, ATMs, store frontages, all of it." A pause. "No, that's not acceptable. Get it done." The female medic, Dr. Chen, according to her name tag, moves with quiet efficiency, checking Monroe's vitals and adjusting the IV drip. Her touch is clinical but gentle, so different from the brutal hands that had sent Monroe sprawling hours ago. "Try to rest," Dr. Chen murmurs, dimming the lights further. "The pain medication should help." Monroe's fingers twitch, seeking her missing phone. The need to document, to preserve evidence, runs bone deep after years of training. But her camera's gone, probably shattered on the sidewalk where she fell. The thought makes her chest tighten. Through the partially open door, she catches glimpses of Cade as he paces. His tailored suit remains immaculate despite the rain, but tension radiates from his broad shoulders. He speaks in low tones to a succession of men who appear and disappear like shadows, each receiving precise instructions delivered with deadly calm. "Double the patrols. No one enters or exits the building without direct clearance." His voice carries the weight of absolute authority. "And find out who owns that convenience store on the corner. I want their security footage." Monroe shivers, despite the warmth. She's seen Cade Viscari before, always at a distance. The untouchable, head of the city's most powerful syndicate. But nothing had prepared her for the intensity of his focus when he'd found her, or the careful way he'd lifted her despite his obvious rage. The pain medication pulls at her consciousness, making the edges of the room blur. She fights it, trying to piece together the sequence of events that led her here. The file she'd been meant to deliver, the flash drive hidden in her boot, the men who'd been waiting. A soft knock at the door draws her attention. One of Cade's men, younger than the others with close-cropped dark hair, hands him a tablet. Monroe watches through heavy eyelids as Cade's expression darkens at whatever he sees on the screen. "Sir," the young man begins, "about the witness." "Not now." Cade's tone brooks no argument. He glances toward Monroe's bed, and something in his steel-gray eyes softens fractionally. "Secure the perimeter. Full lockdown protocols." Rain continues its steady rhythm against the windows as Monroe drifts between consciousness and shadow. The medical suite feels suspended in time, a fortress of sterile whites and gleaming chrome, insulated from the violence of the streets below. Dr. Chen adjusts something on one of the monitors, her movements precise and practiced. Blood pressure's stabilizing, no signs of concussion, but those ribs will need time to heal. Monroe wants to protest that she can't stay, that she has obligations and deadlines and people depending on her. But her body feels weighted down, limbs heavy with exhaustion and medication. Even keeping her eyes open becomes a monumental task. Through the haze, she's aware of Cade moving closer to her bed. His presence fills the room, not just physically, but with an aura of contained power. He speaks quietly with Dr. Chen, their voices a low murmur that Monroe can't quite follow. "Need to monitor overnight. Security detail in place. Notify me immediately if..." The last thing Monroe registers before sleep claims her completely is the whisper of expensive wool as Cade settles into a chair near her bed. Even with her eyes closed, she can feel him there. A dangerous guardian angel in an Italian suit, keeping watch as rain drums steadily against the windows, and the city's neon glow paints patterns on the walls. The medical suite's climate control hums softly, maintaining perfect temperature despite the storm outside. Monitors continue their quiet vigilance, tracking her vital signs in glowing green lines. And somewhere in the building's depths, Cade's men move with silent efficiency, securing exits and reviewing footage, hunting for those who dared to hurt what their boss has claimed as his to protect. Time creeps toward 2 a.m. As Monroe finally surrenders to exhaustion, her breathing evening out into the rhythm of deep sleep. The last drops of rain tap against the windows like Morse code, spelling out secrets in the dark. Through it all, Cade maintains his vigil, his gray eyes never leaving her face, his phone periodically lighting up with updates from his men as they methodically turn the city inside out, searching for answers. At 2:06 a.m., the harsh fluorescent lights of the clinic corridor make Monroe's head throb. She rubs her eyes, trying to clear the medication-induced fog. The sterile hallway stretches before her, white and endless, broken only by the rhythmic blinking of security cameras. Movement catches her attention. At the far end of the corridor, a figure materializes like a ghost. Dark clothes, tactical gear, and a mask that obscures everything but cold eyes. The suppressed pistol in his grip gleams under the fluorescent lights. Monroe's gaze fixes on an unfamiliar patch adorning his sleeve, her photographer's instinct automatically cataloging details even as danger approaches. The masked man advances with practiced stealth, each step precise and measured. But before Monroe can even process the threat fully, Cade materializes between them. His movement is fluid, lethal, like mercury given form. There's no hesitation, no warning. One moment he's standing guard, the next he's across the space. The intruder's wrist snaps with an audible crack as Cade disarms him. The suppressed pistol clatters to the floor as Cade slams the man against the wall with enough force to rattle the framed certificates. Dr. Chen flinches at the display of violence, backing away with wide eyes. But Monroe feels oddly calm. There's something almost beautiful in the efficiency of Cade's movements. No wasted motion, no unnecessary force. Just pure, clinical violence, executed with precision. Security personnel flood the hallway, securing the intruder while Cade barks orders. Within minutes, they're reviewing security footage in a nearby office. The sleeve patch identifies their uninvited guest as Orsini faction, Cade's longtime rivals in the city's underworld. Monroe watches Cade's jaw tighten as they examine the intruder's burner phone, discovering a time-stamped map pin dropped outside the clinic shortly after their arrival. "They tracked us here," Cade says, his voice carrying an edge of controlled fury. "Your rescue drew their attention." He turns to Monroe, steel-gray eyes intense. "If you walk out those doors now, you'll be dead before dawn." A pause, heavy with implication. "Stay, and I'll make sure that doesn't happen." The next hour passes in a blur of activity as Cade's people prepare for transport. At 3:15 a.m., Monroe finds herself in an armored SUV with blackout windows. The vehicle glides through empty streets while she stares at her hands, remembering the crack of her phone screen as it shattered during the assault. The memory feels distant, like it happened to someone else. "My phone," she whispers, more to herself than to Cade, who sits beside her, radiating controlled tension. "They smashed it when..." She trails off, unable to complete the thought. Cade doesn't press her to continue. Instead, he maintains a watchful silence as they ascend to his penthouse, a fortress of steel and glass high above the city. The safe suite he leads her to takes her breath away, despite her exhaustion. Floor-to-ceiling windows offer a panoramic view of the skyline, the pre-dawn darkness making the city lights sparkle like fallen stars. The closet, when she explores it, is fully stocked with clothes in her size, everything from casual wear to evening gowns. The attention to detail should unnerve her, but instead it speaks to Cade's thoroughness. The bedroom is a separate sanctuary with its own lock, one that can only be controlled from inside. The message is clear. This space is hers alone. Time seems to slow as night gradually gives way to dawn. Monroe watches the transformation from her bed, wrapped in sheets that probably cost more than her monthly rent. At 6:02 a.m., the sky begins to blush pink, painting the glass towers in soft rose and gold. A quiet knock announces Cade's presence. He enters carrying a silver tray with tea service, delicate porcelain cups, honey in a crystal jar, and steam rising from the spout of an elegant teapot. He sets it on her nightstand with careful precision, his movements deliberately measured to telegraph each action. "No one enters without your invitation," he says, his deep voice pitched low. His eyes remain fixed on the task of arranging the tray, studiously avoiding looking at her mouth or the way the silk robe she wears falls across her shoulders. "This floor is yours." The elevator requires both keycard and biometric access. Security monitors all approaches 24/7. Monroe wraps her hands around the warm teacup, studying the city spread out below. From this height, the streets look like arteries carrying the lifeblood of urban life. Somewhere down there, people are starting their day, unaware of the power struggles playing out in the shadows. The irony isn't lost on her. She's safer here in the den of one of the city's most dangerous men than she would be in any apartment or hotel. The realization should frighten her. Instead, she feels an odd sense of calm as she watches the sun continue its slow ascent, painting the sky in increasingly brilliant shades of pink and gold. Below, early morning traffic begins to flow through the streets like water finding its level. Up here, in this glass and steel sanctuary, those concerns feel distant, held at bay by security systems, armed guards, and the dangerous man who has appointed himself her protector. Monroe wakes at 9:10 a.m. to the gentle drumming of rain against floor-to-ceiling windows. The city below disappears and reappears through patches of mist, buildings reduced to soft-edged shadows. On the dresser, fresh clothes lie folded with military precision. Soft gray leggings, an oversized cream sweater, and underwear with tags still attached. The domestic care in their arrangement feels oddly intimate. In the ensuite bathroom, steam fills the air as she catalogs her injuries under the rainfall showerhead. Purple bruises bloom along her ribs, each breath a reminder of last night's violence. Her reflection in the fog-free mirror shows a stranger. Same green eyes and copper hair, but something fundamental has shifted. The woman who walked home from her night shift at the art gallery feels like a different person entirely. The kitchen gleams with stainless steel and white marble. Monroe finds a bowl of steel-cut oatmeal waiting, topped with fresh berries and honey. She tests the boundaries of her new cage while she eats, padding barefoot across heated floors. The main level is open to her, all clean lines and calculated luxury. But when she tries the stairs, a security guard materializes with a polite but firm headshake. "The phone?" she asks, spotting a sleek landline on a side table. "Supervised calls only, miss," the guard replies. The weapons room, obvious from its reinforced door and biometric lock, remains firmly sealed. Each test defines the edges of her confinement more clearly. Memory returns in sharp, painful fragments as she paces. The warehouse fire, after her shift, flames painting the night sky orange. She'd been waiting for the late bus, phone recording the spectacle through grimy bus stop glass. Then movement caught her eye. A man turning, moonlight catching the tattoos on his neck. Their eyes met across the street. He saw her phone. The black SUV had idled too long after she boarded the bus, following at a distance. Later, behind the 24-hour grocery, rough hands grabbed her. Her phone hit brick, screen spiderwebbing before going dark forever. The rest is a blur of running, falling, lying beside that trash bin until Cade's sedan appeared. Cade finds her at the kitchen island, his gray cashmere sweater making his eyes look almost silver in the diffused daylight. He places his hands flat on the marble counter, listening as she pieces together the timeline. "The tattoo," she says, "on his neck. It matched the patch from last night at the clinic." "Orsini faction," Cade confirms, voice low and controlled. "They're territorial about that area. The warehouse fire wasn't random." The implication settles like lead in her stomach. Whatever she accidentally recorded, someone wants it erased, along with any witnesses. Her hands shake as she pushes away her half-eaten oatmeal. Rain continues throughout the afternoon, turning the view hazy. Monroe explores every accessible inch of the penthouse. The gym with its pristine equipment, the library filled with leather-bound volumes, the entertainment room with its massive screen. Each space feels both luxurious and impersonal, like an upscale hotel suite. At 6:40 p.m., as dusk settles over the city, instinct drives her to try the front door. It opens, but two of Cade's men stand like sentinels in the hallway. Their presence delivers the message clearer than words. There's no walking back to her old life. Any attempt would end in a carefully orchestrated accident. The reality of her situation crystallizes. She's traded one form of captivity for another, safer, more gilded, but captivity nonetheless. The difference lies in intention. Her attackers want her dead, while Cade seems determined to keep her alive. Hours pass in a strange limbo. Monroe watches the city transform into a grid of lights below, each window representing lives continuing normally, while hers has derailed completely. her apartment, her job at the gallery, her careful routine, all suspended in a moment of wrong place, wrong time. By 10:15 p.m., she retreats to her bedroom, engaging the lock with a decisive click. The city's glow paints patterns on her ceiling, a dance of light and shadow. Footsteps approach, Cade's distinctive measured stride. They pause outside her door, lingering just long enough to confirm her presence, then fade away down the hall. Silence settles like another blanket over the penthouse. Monroe lies awake, watching the light show above her bed. She's safe here, protected by walls of glass and steel, by armed men and security systems, by Cade's ruthless efficiency. But safety, she's learning, comes with its own price tag. The rain has stopped, leaving the night clear and cold. Somewhere in the city, the Orsini faction is hunting, searching for loose ends to tie off. Up here in her gilded cage, Monroe counts her breaths, each one a reminder that she's still alive, still fighting. The woman who filmed that warehouse fire might be gone, but whoever she's becoming will need to be stronger, smarter, more careful with her trust. The ceiling continues its light show, headlights and street lamps creating ever-changing patterns. Monroe watches them dance, marking time in this strange new reality where safety and captivity blur together, where protection and possession speak the same language, where the most dangerous man she knows might be her only chance at survival. At 7:32 a.m., Monroe's hands tremble around her coffee mug as Cade's tech specialist hunches over a laptop at the dining table. The man's fingers move with practiced precision across the keyboard, coaxing data from her phone's mangled storage chip. The scent of expensive coffee fills the air, but it does little to settle her nerves. "Got something," the tech says, his voice carefully neutral. Video fragments, mostly corrupted, but a few frames are intact. Monroe leans forward, her breath catching as the images load. Through the static and digital artifacts, two figures emerge beside the burning warehouse. The first she recognizes immediately. An Orsini lieutenant whose face appears regularly in society pages, always hovering near the edges of charity galas. But it's the second figure that makes her coffee cup clatter against its saucer. "That's..." Her voice cracks. "That's Richard West." Cade's attention sharpens. "Your stepfather." "Yes." The word tastes bitter. "Director of the West Foundation for Urban Development. Always preaching about cleaning up downtown." She laughs, but it sounds hollow. "He taught me that appearance is everything. That success means never letting anyone see the cracks." Cade's jaw ticks once, a microscopic tell that speaks volumes. His eyes narrow as he studies the footage, then sweep to his phone as it buzzes with incoming messages. "This wasn't random," he says, voice low and controlled. "Someone leaked my route." "What do you mean?" "They knew I'd be passing through that area. Knew I'd stop for a woman in distress." His fingers drum once against the table. "They wanted me to rescue you." "Why?" "To expose a weakness. Show the world there's something I..." He stops, recalibrates. "Someone I'd break protocol to protect." Monroe's coffee has gone cold, forgotten between her palms. "But why me? Why involve me at all?" "Because you're connected to West. They probably assumed I already knew that." Cade turns to his tech. "Pull everything on the clinic staff's movements for the past 24 hours. Full audit of supplies, access logs, everything." The tech nods and opens new windows on his laptop while Cade makes calls, his voice dropping to that dangerous whisper that seems to make everyone around him stand straighter. Monroe watches him work, seeing the precise machinery of his organization snap into action. "I spent my whole life trying to be perfect," she says quietly, more to herself than to him. "I thought if I never showed weakness, if I maintained the right image, I'd be safe." Cade ends his call and looks at her, really looks at her, for the first time since the footage appeared. "In my world, safety doesn't come from perfection. It comes from control, from having enough leverage to make people think twice about crossing you." The morning stretches into afternoon, marked by a parade of Cade's people coming and going with reports. Monroe watches from the kitchen as he builds a picture of the trap that was laid, not just for her, but for him. Every piece of information gets categorized, analyzed, factored into whatever strategy is forming behind his careful mask. At 4:55 p.m., he hands her a new phone. It's sleek, expensive, with none of her old contacts or photos. A blank slate. "Temporary number," he says. "Don't contact anyone yet. Friends, coworkers, especially not family." "You think they're compromised?" "I think anyone you trust could be. Your stepfather's involvement changes everything." He studies her face. We need to assume he's been watching you, using you as a chess piece without your knowledge. The thought makes her skin crawl. How many casual conversations, chance encounters, seemingly random moments might have been orchestrated? How long has she been a pawn in someone else's game? The afternoon fades into evening as storm clouds gather over the city. Thunder rolls in the distance, and the first fat drops of rain spatter against the floor-to-ceiling windows. Monroe paces, trying to reconcile the father figure who insisted on perfect table manners with the man in the video, dealing with criminals beside a burning building. By 8:03 p.m., the storm is building in earnest. Cade stands at the window, speaking softly into an earpiece, coordinating his people's movements through the gathering dark. Monroe moves to stand beside him, watching lightning illuminate the churning river below. His reflection overlaps with the city lights, sharp cheekbones, stern mouth, eyes that miss nothing. But she's starting to see past the surface, past the dangerous reputation and cold efficiency. She sees a man who builds walls to protect what's his, who turns his lethal edges outward to keep his inner circle safe. Not a monster, she realizes, studying his reflection. A guardian with blood on his hands and steel in his spine. Yes, but also a man who brings her tea with honey, who gives her doors that lock from the inside, who moves through the world like a weapon but touches her with careful hands. Lightning flashes again, closer now, throwing their reflections into sharp relief against the darkness beyond. They stand together, watching the storm approach, her with her shattered illusions about family and safety, him with his carefully constructed systems of control and protection. The thunder that follows seems to shake the very foundations of the building. But up here in Cade's fortress, Monroe feels strangely steady. She sees their reflections merge with the city lights and storm clouds, the rescued and the rescuer, the protected and the protector, both caught in a game neither of them chose but must now play to survive. His shoulder nearly touches hers, close enough that she can feel the contained power in his stance, the coiled readiness that never fully leaves him. Monroe wakes to sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting warm stripes across her borrowed bed. At 9 a.m., she finds Cade in the kitchen, attempting to make breakfast. The smell of burnt toast fills the air. "I'm usually better at this," he says, frowning at the charred bread. She laughs, a genuine sound that seems to surprise them both. "It's okay. I like it crispy." They settle into breakfast, perfectly cooked eggs despite the toast debacle. Monroe notices how Cade's shoulders relax slightly when she eats, as if her appetite reassures him. The morning light softens his sharp edges, makes the kitchen feel almost normal. By noon, it's time to change her bandages. Cade's hands are steady as he holds her wrist, treating it like delicate crystal. His fingers are warm against her skin, and she studies the contrast between his capable strength and this gentle care. "Does it hurt?" he asks, voice low. "Not much anymore." She watches him work, wondering how hands that can break bones so efficiently can also be this careful. At 3:20 p.m., Cade shows her the panic room procedures. 2 seconds, he instructs, demonstrating the lock mechanism. "That's all you need." Monroe practices until her movements are fluid, automatic. She catches him watching her with approval, and something warm unfurls in her chest at his nod. "Again," he says, "muscle memory could save your life." The afternoon stretches into early evening. At 5:15 p.m., Monroe explores the penthouse library, running her fingers along leather spines. She finds a collection of poetry, its pages worn soft with reading. Opening it reveals penciled notes and margins. Cade's handwriting, she realizes, neat and precise even in private thoughts. She settles into a window seat with the book, stealing glances at him as he works at his desk. The setting sun gilds his profile, and she finds herself studying the strong line of his jaw, the focused intensity in his eyes. 7 o'clock brings them back to the kitchen. Monroe insists on helping with dinner prep, and Cade reluctantly agrees. They work in companionable silence, the rhythm of chopping vegetables and sizzling pans filling the space between them. Their hands brush over the cutting board, an accidental touch that sends electricity up Monroe's arm. They both freeze, the contact lingering a heartbeat too long before breaking away. The air feels charged, heavy with unspoken things. Later, as pasta simmers, Cade speaks quietly. "I had a brother once." His voice is controlled, but Monroe hears the old pain underneath. "I was too slow, too careful. He paid the price." Monroe absorbs this, understanding the weight of his confession. "I'm sorry," she says softly. "It taught me to be faster, better." His knuckles whiten on the counter. Never to hesitate when someone needs protection. The vulnerability in his admission moves her to share her own truth. "My stepfather," she begins, stirring the sauce. "He was obsessed with appearances. Everything had to be perfect for the foundation donors, including me." Cade listens intently as she continues. "I had scripts for dinner parties, practiced responses about how grateful I was for my blessed life." She laughs without humor. "None of it was real. None of it was mine." "And now you know why he wanted everything controlled," Cade observes. "Easier to hide secrets behind perfect facades." They eat dinner at 8:40 p.m., the city lights twinkling beyond the windows. Monroe catches Cade looking at her mouth as she talks, his gaze dropping before quickly shifting away. The intentional denial in that small action sends heat coursing through her. She watches him move around the kitchen afterward, the contained power in his movements, the careful distance he maintains. Every accidental brush of contact feels magnified, charged with possibility. The evening winds down slowly. Thunder rumbles in the distance, promising rain. Monroe notices how Cade's attention keeps returning to her, though he tries to hide it behind paperwork and phone calls. At 10:58 p.m., Monroe lies in bed, listening to the quiet sounds of the penthouse. The refrigerator hums steadily, a mechanical lullaby. Her heartbeat has finally slowed from the day's subtle tensions, the growing awareness between them. In the kitchen, she can hear Cade making another espresso, his second, unnecessary this late. She pictures him standing in the dark, city lights painting shadows across his face, fighting whatever keeps him from sleep. The thunder grows closer, and Monroe feels oddly safe in this strange new rhythm they're building, protected by a man who turns his dangerous edges away from her, who shows her escape routes while drawing her closer, who looks at her mouth like a forbidden thing and brings her tea with honey. The day has been a dance of boundaries tested and maintained, of trust cautiously extended and carefully honored. In the quiet dark of her room, Monroe acknowledges the fierce warmth that blooms when he's near, the way her skin tingles with awareness at his proximity. She listens to his soft movements beyond her door, feeling the weight of all their shared confessions and careful distances, while the promise of rain hangs heavy in the air. At 11:13 p.m., the garage alarm's low warning tone breaks the night's quiet. Monroe sits up in bed, heart suddenly racing as she hears rapid footsteps in the hallway. The ping is steady, insistent, not a malfunction. Cade appears in her doorway, his finger pressed to his earpiece. His entire body goes rigid as he listens, jaw clenching. "Monroe." Her name comes out sharp, commanding. He's already moving toward her, his other hand reaching for the weapon at his side. "Time to move." His voice stays controlled, but urgency threads through each word. He guides her with firm pressure between her shoulder blades, steering them toward an armored stairwell she hadn't known existed behind a panel in the wall. A sudden spray of sparks rains down from the ceiling, the security panel near the garage entrance shorting out in a shower of light. The acrid smell of burned wiring fills the air. Monroe's pulse pounds in her throat as Cade positions himself between her and the threat, his movements precise and practiced. The first attacker appears in the garage doorway. Cade's response is immediate and brutal. 2 shots crack through the air, followed by the controlled sweep of his leg taking down a second man. He breaks the arm of a third with mechanical efficiency, the snap of bone punctuated by a grunt of pain. Bullets ping off concrete, forcing them back. Cade's body becomes a shield, pressing Monroe against the wall as fragments of cement dust their shoulders. His breath is steady against her hair, his trigger finger smooth and sure as he returns fire. Monroe doesn't flinch or look away. The violence unfolding before her should be terrifying, but she finds herself oddly calm. The fear coursing through her veins isn't for the lethal predator protecting her, it's for the men foolish enough to try taking her from him. More attackers pour in. Cade moves like water, each motion flowing into the next. A punch that crushes a windpipe, an elbow that shatters a nose, a kick that sends a knife clattering across the floor. He is ruthlessly efficient, keeping Monroe behind him as he systematically eliminates every threat. The firefight seems to stretch forever, though it can only be minutes. Brass casings ring against concrete. The air grows thick with cordite. Monroe counts her breaths, staying close to Cade's back as he works, feeling the shift of his muscles as he turns to face each new danger. At 12:04 a.m., the last attacker falls. The sudden silence feels deafening. Cade does a final sweep of the garage, checking corners and shadows before returning to Monroe. His hands are gentle as they frame her face, tilting it to check for injuries. His fingers skim her arms, searching for cuts from flying debris. Only when he's certain she's unharmed does he allow himself to exhale. The breath shudders out of him, the first crack in his composed facade. His thumb brushes her cheek, smearing a streak of gunpowder residue. "Are you hurt?" he asks, voice rough. Monroe shakes her head. "I'm okay." She realizes her fingers are gripping his shirt and forces them to relax. Cade's security team arrives moments later, efficient in their cleanup. He keeps Monroe close as they assess the damage and identify the attackers. His expression darkens at whatever his men report through the earpiece. "The penthouse isn't secure," he says finally. "They knew too much about our defenses." His jaw works as he comes to a decision. "We need to move you somewhere safer." The somewhere safer turns out to be even closer to him. Monroe watches as Cade personally oversees the repositioning of a bed into the safe suite's inner room, a space she hadn't even known existed behind yet another hidden panel. The walls are reinforced steel, the door equipped with both electronic and manual locks. He brings blankets himself, arranging them with unexpected care. There's an intimacy to the gesture that goes beyond mere practicality. His hands smooth the fabric, creating order from chaos, building her a nest within his fortress. "No one can reach you here," he says, testing the locks one final time. "Not without going through me first." Monroe sits on the edge of the bed, watching him move around the small space. His efficiency should feel clinical, but there's something else beneath it, a protective instinct that manifests in these small, careful actions. The way he angles the bed to face the door, the extra pillow he adds without being asked, the bottle of water placed within easy reach. By 2:22 a.m., exhaustion finally pulls Monroe under. The last thing she sees before sleep claims her as Cade, settling into a chair outside her door. His jacket is draped over the chair's arm, his holster still secure against his ribs. His eyes remain alert in the dim light, keeping watch. She drifts off, knowing he'll be there until morning, a lethal guardian whose violence turns only outward, never toward her. The chair's position lets him watch both her door and the suite's entrance. Even in rest, he positions himself between her and danger. The night settles into quiet, broken only by the soft sound of Cade checking his weapon, the whispered updates through his earpiece, the steady rhythm of Monroe's breathing as she finally sleeps. Outside, the city continues its midnight dance of shadows and light, unaware of the battle fought in its midst or the man who sits vigil, eyes open in the darkness, protecting what's his. The pre-dawn hours cast long shadows across the evidence table. At 5:48 a.m., Cade's armorer holds up a tiny device under harsh fluorescent light, a micro-tracker no bigger than a grain of rice, pulled from the weave of a clinic blanket. Monroe wraps her borrowed hoodie tighter, the soft fabric a stark contrast to her silk pajamas underneath. The tracker glints like a deadly little star. "Authorization codes check out," the text says, sliding over a tablet displaying procurement records. "These blankets came through last week's clinic restock, signed off by Rocco Vale." Cade goes still, in that particular way Monroe has come to recognize, the calm before violence. His fingers trace the edge of the documentation, and she watches his mind work through the implications. Rocco Vale, ambitious underboss, pusher of aggressive tactics, advocate for open war with the Orsini family. "He's been lobbying for expansion into Orsini territory," Cade says, voice low and controlled, claiming we need to strike first before they do. Monroe steps closer to the table, studying the tiny device that had betrayed their location. "He used my rescue as bait," she says softly. "He knew you'd bring me to the clinic." The realization settles cold in her stomach. Her presence made Cade vulnerable, someone who knows his protocols, his habits, his carefully guarded weak spots, had engineered this entire situation. They mean to use her as a pressure point until something breaks. Cade's jaw tightens. He's always wanted more authority than he's earned. His phone buzzes with updates from his security teams. The clinic attack, the garage breach, it all traces back to information only the inner circle would have. Through the morning, tension builds like an approaching storm. At 11:10 a.m., Cade makes a series of calls, setting up a meeting for dusk. His voice remains steady, giving nothing away to whoever might be listening. Monroe recognizes the careful construction of a trap. When she moves through the penthouse, she notices the extra shadows. More of Cade's men positioned at key points, their attention sharp. 2 guards now where there used to be one, additional eyes watching every angle. By early afternoon, hunger finally drives them to the kitchen. Monroe insists on cooking, needing the normality of ordinary tasks. She stirs a sauce while Cade leans against the counter, his presence both protective and distracting. "Taste this," she says at 2:30 p.m., holding up a spoon. The sauce is too sweet. She knows it before he even tries it, but she wants to see if he'll tell her the truth. Cade's lips quirk as he tastes it. Interesting choice, he says diplomatically. It's terrible, Monroe laughs, the sound surprising them both. I got distracted with the sugar. For a moment, they're just two people sharing a kitchen, but the illusion shatters quickly. The guards outside shift positions. Cade's phone buzzes with another update. The normalcy only highlights how abnormal everything else has become. They eat at the kitchen island, Monroe picking at her food while Cade reviews security footage on a tablet. His free hand stays close to his weapon, a habit she's noticed more since the garage attack. Every few minutes, his eyes scan the windows, the doors, the shadows. The meeting location is secure, he says eventually. Triple vetted team only, no electronics allowed inside. Monroe sets down her fork. You think Rocco will show? He has to maintain appearances. Cade's expression hardens. He doesn't know we found the tracker. He'll want to watch my moves, gauge how much I suspect. As afternoon bleeds into evening, Monroe watches Cade prepare. He checks his weapons with practiced efficiency, adjusts his jacket to ensure clean draws, verifies communications with his team. Everything precise, controlled, deadly. At 6:02 p.m., city lights begin their nightly awakening, dotting the skyline like earthbound stars. From the window, Monroe watches Cade's convoy emerge from the underground parking ramp. 3 identical black SUVs, impossible to tell which one carries him. Her fingers press against the cool glass. Below, the vehicles merge into traffic, heading toward a meeting that could explode into violence at any moment. She thinks of the garage firefight, of Cade moving like a weapon with her safety as his only priority, of blood on concrete and brass casings scattered like coins. Not again, she whispers to her reflection. I won't be why you bleed again. The convoy disappears around a corner, swallowed by the growing darkness. Monroe stays at the window, counting her breaths, aware of the guards positioned outside her door. The city sprawls before her, a maze of light and shadow, where somewhere, a man she's growing to trust drives toward calculated danger. Her borrowed hoodie still smells faintly of him, gunpowder and expensive cologne and that indefinable sense of safety she's come to associate with his presence. She tugs it closer, watching the streets below, promising herself and the empty room that she won't be the weak point that brings him down. Won't be the leverage that forces his hand or the vulnerability that costs him everything. The first stars appear above the city's glow as darkness settles fully. Monroe remains at her post, tracking the time, knowing that somewhere in the gathering night, Cade faces a betrayer across a table, playing a game where her life might be the stakes. Monroe's fingers trace invisible patterns on the kitchen counter at 7:11 p.m., her voice barely above a whisper. I have something to tell you. Cade turns from the window, reading the tension in her shoulders. Before my phone was destroyed, I backed up the warehouse video. She meets his gaze. I have an encrypted cloud account under an alias. I've used it for months, street photography mostly. That night it was just habit. Upload everything immediately. His expression shifts microscopically. Show me. Monroe pulls up the account on her temporary phone. The footage is there, crisp and damning. The warehouse's orange flames illuminate every detail. The Orsini fixer's distinctive neck tattoo, her stepfather's manicured hands gesturing as he speaks, the briefcase exchange that explains everything. This could destroy them, Cade says, voice low and controlled. Orsini's entire operation was City Hall, your stepfather's reputation. And how many innocent people get caught in the crossfire? Monroe challenges. The Foundation employees who don't know what he really is? The families who depend on those jobs? Collateral damage happens in war. That's exactly what I'm afraid of. She steps closer, heat rising in her voice. You talk about control and leverage, but this would be chaos, a match in a powder room. Sometimes the room needs to burn. His eyes are dark, intense. Your compassion is admirable, but it could get you killed. And your calculus is cold, she fires back. There has to be a way to expose the truth without setting the whole city on fire. They're standing too close now, the argument drawing them into each other's space until she can feel the heat radiating from his body. His cologne mingles with the lingering scent of gunpowder from his earlier weapons check. You think there's a clean solution? His voice drops lower, rougher. In my world, I'm in your world now too, she cuts him off. And I'm not asking for clean, I'm asking for better than scorched earth. The tension between them shifts, transforms. Monroe becomes acutely aware of how close their mouths are, how his eyes drop to her lips. The argument's heat bleeds into something else entirely. Her breath catches. Cade's hand rises, almost touching her cheek. At 7:19 p.m., the window explodes. Glass sprays across the counter as Cade moves with liquid speed, yanking Monroe down and covering her body with his. A perfect spider's web of cracks blooms where her head had been moments before. Impossible angle, he growls into her hair. They shouldn't have that line of sight. His earpiece crackles with urgent voices. Monroe feels his chest expand against her back as he issues rapid commands. Initiate Echo Protocol. Full sweep, all quadrants. I want that shooter's position. He shifts slightly, keeping her sheltered. And get the lake house ready. Minimal staff, maximum security, 10 minutes. They move like shadows through the penthouse. Monroe grabs only essentials, the temporary phone, a warm jacket, her borrowed hoodie. Cade efficiently checks his weapons while directing his team through the earpiece. The elevator ride to the garage is tense, Monroe's back pressed to Cade's chest as he watches both their reflections in the polished doors. His free hand stays at her waist, thumb moving in small, possibly unconscious circles. They take an unmarked SUV, dark and sleek. Cade drives, his movements precise and controlled. Rain starts falling as they hit the highway, fat drops that blur the city lights behind them. The wipers create a steady rhythm that matches Monroe's heartbeat. She watches his hand on the steering wheel, flexing, relaxing, flexing again. The movement betrays the tension he's holding in check. Neither speaks. The phone in her pocket feels heavy with its dangerous video, but she doesn't reach for it, doesn't text anyone or make calls, just watches the rain and the highway and Cade's hand on the wheel. The city falls away, replaced by darker spaces between smaller towns. Trees crowd the roadside, their wet branches glinting in the headlights. Monroe loses track of time, lulled by the engine's purr and the wiper's steady beat. At 10:36 p.m., they turn onto a private drive that winds through dense forest. The lake house emerges from the darkness. Modern lines in cedar and glass, somehow both elegant and fortress-like. Security lights activate as they approach, casting soft illumination across the wet driveway. Cade parks under a covered portico and runs a technical sweep before letting Monroe out of the vehicle. The alarm system requires multiple codes and a biometric scan. When the door finally opens, the silence is absolute. They step into darkness that smells of cedar and rain. Monroe's ears ring with the sudden quiet. No city noise, no traffic, no voices in earpieces, just the soft sound of her own pulse and Cade's steady breathing beside her. He moves through the space with familiar efficiency, activating minimal lighting and checking sightlines through windows. Monroe stands in the entryway, adjusting to this new reality. The hush feels physical, like a weight on her skin. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, she catches glimpses of dark water beyond a private dock. The rain has softened to a gentle patter on the roof. Inside, the air is still and cool, waiting to be disturbed. Monroe releases a breath she didn't know she was holding. Her pulse sounds loud in her ears, a reminder that she's alive, that the bullet missed, that they made it here, wherever here is, intact. The video in her phone could still burn down an empire, but for now, in this moment of deep quiet, there's only the rain, the darkness, and Cade's presence at her back, solid as a shield. By 11:05 p.m., thunder rolls across the lake like artillery fire. The storm advances in waves, each flash of lightning illuminating the choppy water beyond the deck. When the power flickers and drops to backup systems, the great room plunges into shadow before emergency lights hum to life. Cade moves through the space with practiced familiarity, lighting the massive stone fireplace while Monroe watches the flames catch. The generator's low drone reminds them of its carefully rationed power. Inner rooms will be too cold, Cade says, his voice practical but softer than usual. Generators prioritizing security systems over comfort. Monroe pulls his borrowed sweater closer, the thick wool carrying traces of his scent. So we adapt. Together, they maneuver a mattress from one of the guest rooms, positioning it before the hearth where firelight paints the walls in amber and gold. Monroe adds pillows while Cade disappears into the kitchen, returning with 2 bowls of reheated stew and crusty bread. They sit cross-legged on the mattress, close enough that their knees touch. The domesticity of it feels surreal after the violence of recent days. Thunder crashes closer, and Monroe's thick socks slide against the sheets as she adjusts her position. "Tell me something true," she says between bites. "Something that has nothing to do with guns or rivals or video footage." Cade considers this, firelight casting shadows across his face. The lake's better in winter, he offers finally. Everything goes still. You can walk out on the ice before sunrise and feel like the last person alive. You like the quiet. I like the clarity. He tears a piece of bread, watching the steam rise. Your turn. Monroe smiles, remembering. 2 years ago, I dropped a crate of Renaissance sculptures during transport. Technically priceless. The whole thing just splintered, she demonstrates with her hands. I had to catalog every single fragment. How long did that take? 3 weeks. I learned more about Italian marble than I ever wanted to know. The storm presses closer, rain now hammering the roof like percussion. Their empty bowls sit forgotten on the hearth as they trade more pieces of themselves. His first car restoration, her worst photography assignment, the stories that shaped them before their worlds collided. Lightning flashes, and Monroe catches Cade watching her mouth as she speaks. The air changes, charges with something electric that has nothing to do with the storm. The distance between them has been shrinking all night, measured in shared breaths and careful truths. When they finally kiss, it feels inevitable, like gravity, like dawn, like the tide pulling at the shore below. Cade's mouth is gentle at first, giving her space to retreat. But Monroe leans in, one hand sliding to his nape, and the kiss deepens into something that burns slow and bright. His fingers thread through her hair, cradling her head with a tenderness that makes her heart ache. She traces the strong line of his jaw, feeling the slight roughness of stubble against her palm. Everything narrows to points of contact, his thumb stroking her cheek, her fingers curling in his shirt, the soft sound he makes when she pulls him. Closer. Monroe, he breathes against her lips, a question and a warning. She answers by kissing him again, deeper this time. His control frays beautifully as she tugs him down to the mattress. But even as desire burns between them, Cade remains mindful of her healing ribs, his touch careful around the fading bruises. Monroe works at his buttons while he maps her skin with reverent hands. Each layer shed feels like truth-telling. His scars tell stories of survival. Her smooth skin holds constellations of freckles he traces like star maps. When he hesitates, still trying to maintain some restraint, she guides his hands where she wants them. I won't break, she whispers. You're sure? His voice is rough with wanting. I'm sure of you. Something in him surrenders then. The kiss that follows brands them both, searing away everything but this moment, this connection. Their bodies move together with increasing urgency, finding a rhythm as natural as breathing. Monroe arches into his touch as pleasure builds, white-hot and consuming. Rain drums steadily overhead, and the lake whispers against the deck below. The storm has moved directly overhead, but they're lost in their own world of firelight and sensation. Every touch feels like a promise, neither dares speak aloud yet. Instead, they let their bodies have this conversation. In the press of lips, the tangle of limbs, the way Cade whispers her name like prayer. Time becomes fluid, measured only in heartbeats and shared breaths. The fire burns lower as they learn each other by touch and taste. Monroe discovers that kissing a certain spot below Cade's ear makes him shiver. He learns exactly how to touch her to draw out the most exquisite sounds. Afterward, they lie, tangled in sheets warmed by the fire. Cade traces lazy patterns on Monroe's skin while she watches shadows dance across the ceiling. The storm gradually moves east, thunder now distant and rolling. At 4:12 a.m., sleep begins to pull at them both. Monroe's head finds the perfect spot on Cade's shoulder, and his hand comes to rest over her heart. Protective even in rest, guarding what has become precious to him. The fire burns low, casting a gentle glow over their intertwined forms. Outside, the rain continues its steady percussion on the roof, and the lake laps at the shore in an ancient rhythm. But here, in this moment, the world has narrowed to just them, two people who found something worth protecting in each other. Sunlight creeps across the hardwood floor at 10:06 a.m., warming Monroe's face where she's curled against Cade's chest. She stirs first, watching dust motes dance in the golden beam, conscious of every point where their bodies touch. His arm tightens briefly around her waist before his eyes open, dark and soft with sleep. They share a moment of morning after shyness, both remembering the heat of last night while adjusting to this new intimacy in daylight. Monroe tugs the sheet higher, though Cade's seen every inch of her. Now! He brushes a kiss to her shoulder before rising to start coffee, pulling on his discarded pants with casual grace. The rich aroma of coffee fills the great room as they dress unhurriedly. Monroe borrows one of his t-shirts, rolling the sleeves, and they share knowing smiles over steaming mugs. When the power suddenly hums back to life, lights brightening, heating system whirring, they both startle then almost laugh at their jumpiness. The peaceful moment shatters when Cade's phone buzzes. His expression hardens as he reads Rocco's text about an Orsini convoy scheduled to move through the South Docks at 6:14 p.m. The message suggests it's a perfect opportunity to strike while their guard is down. Could be solid intel, Cade says, but his jaw tightens. Could also be bait. He spends the next hour making calls, voice low and controlled as he tries to verify the convoy's route through his usual channels. Monroe watches him pace, noting how he shifts seamlessly between lover and strategist. Finally, he orders his second-in-command, Marco, to lock down the estate's perimeter while he investigates the dock situation personally. "Come here," Cade says softly, leading Monroe to a reinforced door near the kitchen. He shows her how to trigger the estate's panic system, a heavy steel latch that, when pulled, seals all entry points and signals his security team. His fingers linger on her wrist as he demonstrates the mechanism. "I'll be back by 8, he promises, cupping her face. "Stay inside. Marco's team knows their jobs." Monroe nods, trying to ignore the knot of worry in her stomach. "Be careful." His kiss is thorough, but quick, and then he's moving with deadly purpose toward the garage. At 5:02 p.m., his convoy pulls away from the estate. Monroe watches from the window as the vehicles disappear down the private road, sunset bleeding crimson across the lake's surface. She tries to settle her nerves with a hot shower, letting the water sluice away tension. Dressed in black leggings and one of Cade's soft flannel shirts, she curls up in the window seat with a book from his library. The guards make regular rounds, their boots crunching on gravel outside. Time ticks by slowly. Monroe finds herself reading the same paragraph repeatedly, too distracted by every small sound. At 6:47 p.m., the first sign something's wrong is a soft pop from the lakeside deck, followed by wisps of smoke seeping under the door. Her heart slams against her ribs as she springs up, book falling forgotten. Through the growing haze, she spots dark figures in tactical gear breaching the deck's glass doors. Their weapons have suppressors attached, sleek and deadly in the dimming light. Monroe runs for the panic latch, bare feet silent on the floor. She's 3 steps from the mechanism when a man appears in the hallway. She fights without hesitation, muscle memory from self-defense classes taking over. Her elbow connects with his nose in a spray of blood, but he recovers, fast, grabbing her arms. She kicks backward, aiming for his knee, but another mercenary appears. Together they overpower her, forcing her wrists into plastic flex cuffs that bite into her skin. A hood drops over her head, plunging her into darkness that smells of canvas and gun oil. "Hold her still," a voice commands. Male, with the rough edge of old scar tissue affecting his speech. He grabs her jaw through the hood. "Listen carefully, pretty girl. You're going to record a message for your protector. Simple trade. You and access to that cloud drive in exchange for his surrender. Public, on his knees, his whole empire gutted while he watches." Monroe tries to jerk away, but the grip on her arms tightens painfully. They drag her across the deck, her bare feet scraping on wood. She hears the estate's alarm finally trigger, a piercing wail that comes too late. They lift her into what feels like a van, the metal floor cold against her legs. At 7:18 p.m., the vehicle accelerates hard down the private road. Through the hood, Monroe can still hear the alarm screaming into the empty night. She thinks of Cade's convoy, racing toward ghost targets at the docks, while she's carried in the opposite direction. The van takes a sharp turn, tires crunching on gravel, and Monroe braces herself against the wall, trying to memorize every twist and bump of their route. The estate's alarm fades behind them, but its echo seems to linger, a warning that arrived too late, while the man who promised to protect her chases shadows in the gathering dark. At 8:02 p.m., rough hands shove Monroe into what feels like an office chair. The hood comes off, and she blinks against harsh fluorescent light, taking in her surroundings. The room reeks of machine oil and stale cigarettes, with water stains creeping down concrete walls and a metal desk pushed against grimy windows. 3 men in knockoff tactical gear cluster near the door, their argument growing heated. The shortest one, with a neck tattoo creeping above his collar, gestures sharply. "We need to move her before—" "Shut up!" snaps the one with the scarred voice. Boss says hold position. Monroe tests the flex cuffs behind her back, feeling the sharp plastic dig into her wrists. Her bare feet are cold against the concrete floor, and Cade's borrowed flannel offers little warmth in the damp space. She catalogs escape routes. 1 door, windows too high, ventilation shaft too small. The third man, younger with nervous hands, paces. The footage. Is worthless without the decryption key, Monroe cuts in, making her voice steady despite her racing heart. She meets Scar Voice's eyes. Which only I know. He studies her, then barks a laugh. Clever girl, but everyone breaks eventually. Water might help me think, she says, letting exhaustion color her tone. Hard to remember complex passwords when you're dehydrated. Neck Tattoo rolls his eyes, but fetches a paper cup from a water cooler in the corner as he sets it on. The desk. Monroe spots what she needs, a cheap burner phone forgotten among scattered papers. When Neck Tattoo turns away, she shifts, pressing her hip against the desk edge to slide closer. While they argue about moving locations again, she maneuvers until her bound hands can reach the phone. With careful movements, she finds the side button by touch. One long press starts the dead man's timer she configured earlier that day, a digital insurance policy that will email coordinates to a secure account every 30 minutes unless manually canceled. She takes a sip of water to hide her relief. The timer is running, now she just has to stay alive and in one place, long enough for Cade to find her. Across town at 8:29 p.m., Cade's convoy pulls up to the lake estate. He exits the SUV, noting the silence where alarms should be blaring. The deck doors hang open, glass scattered across wooden planks. Inside, overturned furniture and signs of struggle paint a clear picture. His men spread out, checking rooms with weapons drawn, but Cade already knows what they'll find. Nothing. No one. His world narrows to a singular focus as ice fills his veins. "Bring him!" Cade orders into his calm, voice deadly quiet. They escort Rocco to a concrete storage room, zip-tie him to a metal chair under a single buzzing bulb. Cade removes his suit jacket with precise movements, rolling up his sleeves. "Where is she?" Rocco tries bravado first. "What makes you think I—" Cade's fist connects with surgical accuracy. "The clinic supplies, the tracking device, the convoy tip. Start talking." Blood trickles from Rocco's split lip as the truth spills out. The supply contract went through one of his shell companies. He'd been watching, waiting for Cade to show weakness. Monroe was supposed to be that weakness. "The warehouse district," Rocco gasps after Cade applies more pressure. "Near River Street. Industrial strip behind the old paint factory." Cade steps back, straightening his cuffs. His expression doesn't change as he draws his weapon and ends Rocco's betrayal with 2 precise shots. The sound echoes off concrete walls. This is the point of no return, the moment violence becomes his only language. He texts coordinates to his tactical team while walking upstairs. They gather in the great room with maps spread across tables, speaking in hand signals and whispers. Cade marks entry points, blind spots, likely guard positions. His men check weapons and comms with practiced efficiency. By 11:41 p.m., the convoy rolls out into the wet darkness, headlights off, engines humming low through empty streets. In the warehouse office, Monroe shivers as cold seeps through her clothes. Her captors remain tense, checking phones and muttering about missed check-ins. She focuses on breathing steadily, knowing each passing minute brings her closer to either rescue or something worse. The dead man's timer continues its silent countdown. She pictures Cade finding the estate, imagines his controlled fury turning to deadly purpose. The thought steadies her as she watches the clock on the wall tick past midnight, marking every 30 minutes when another set of coordinates broadcasts her location into the dark. Outside, rain starts falling again, drumming against the high windows. The youngest captor peers through blinds at the empty street, while Scar Voice makes calls in the corner, his whispered arguments growing more urgent. Neck Tattoo cleaned his gun 3 times in the past hour, hands jerky with increasing nervousness. They know something's coming. They just don't know what. Monroe closes her eyes, remembering Cade's promise from that first night in the clinic. "No one else will touch you." She holds on to that vow as the storm builds and her captors grow more agitated, counting minutes until either salvation or destruction arrives. The warehouse creaks in the wind, rain washing down concrete walls. In the distance, thunder rolls closer, masking any approach through the wet night. Monroe keeps her breathing even, her expression carefully blank, while her heart pounds out a steady rhythm. Wait, trust, survive. The metallic thud echoes through the warehouse at 12:18 a.m., and Monroe's heart jumps like a startled bird in her chest. She forces her breathing to stay even, in through the nose, out through the mouth, keeping her expression neutral as her captors tense around her. The cheap burner phone she'd positioned earlier sits innocuously on the desk, its scratched screen dark but its front camera having already captured clear shots of 2 faces during their earlier interrogation. She'd angled it toward the door deliberately, tucking it between stacked folders. One last piece of evidence if things go wrong, an insurance policy written in pixels rather than words. Neck Tattoo paces by the grimy window, his boots leaving dusty imprints on the concrete floor. Sweat beads along his hairline as he checks his phone repeatedly, the blue light illuminating the intricate design that winds up from his collar to his jaw. Something's wrong. Beta team should have checked in 20 minutes ago. They're not responding to any signals. Shut up, Scar voice snaps, but his fingers drum against his holster in an anxious rhythm that betrays his confidence. The jagged line across his left cheek twitches with tension, pulling his mouth into an uneven grimace. They're probably just maintaining radio silence like they're supposed to. The emergency lights flicker once, twice, a warning pulse. Then half the warehouse plunges into darkness with an electrical groan. The remaining lights cast long, distorted shadows under the door, turning her captors into nervous silhouettes against the concrete walls. Monroe counts heartbeats, the steady thrum of her pulse marking time as she waits. She knows what tactical darkness means. Someone has cut the power grid selectively, systematically. Someone who knows exactly what they're doing. Outside, Cade's team moves like smoke through the perimeter, their black tactical gear blending with the midnight shadows. Glass cutters work in near silence, their diamond-tipped edges carving precise circles in windows while thermal imaging confirms positions inside. Smoke grenades sit ready, pins loose in expert fingers. The team splits efficiently at Cade's hand signal, one group taking the loading bay with its rolling steel door, another securing the rear exit and its alarm system, while Cade leads the main stack down the office corridor, his movements fluid and predatory. The first guard never sees Cade coming around the corner. There's just a whisper of movement in the darkness, the momentary glint of a carbon steel blade catching emergency light, and Cade catches the body before it hits the ground, one hand clamped over the man's mouth. He lowers it quietly onto the cold concrete, movements precise and controlled as a surgeon's. Each step brings him closer to the office where Monroe's tracking signal originated. The small device, sewn into her clothing, broadcasting its location like a digital heartbeat. Inside, Monroe hears the soft scuff of boots in the hallway, barely audible but unmistakable to her heightened senses. Her captors hear it too, reaching for weapons with suddenly clumsy hands. She tenses her muscles, ready to drop to the floor when the moment comes. The door explodes inward with a splintering crack hanging drunkenly from one hinge. Cade flows through the opening like liquid violence, his first shot taking Neck Tattoo in the shoulder with a wet thud before the man can raise his gun. Blood sprays across the dirty window in a fine mist. The second captor manages to fire, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. But the bullet embeds harmlessly in the wall as Cade's elbow connects with his throat in a devastating strike that crushes his windpipe. Then Cade is beside her, his presence solid and certain as gravity. His knife slices through her zip ties with surgical precision, the sharp blade never touching her skin. His hand cups the back of her head, fingers threading through her hair, testing for injuries. The touch lasts only a moment, but it says everything words can't. Relief, possession, promise. His eyes scan her face, cataloging every detail. Behind me, he orders, already moving to shield her with his body as shots crack from the far hallway. Muzzle flashes illuminating the corridor in strobe-like bursts. Monroe's hands shake from the rush of returning circulation, but her mind is crystal clear. She grabs the dropped phone from its hiding place, fingers flying over the screen despite the tremors. The footage uploads to multiple news outlets and an anonymous tip line, the progress bar filling too slowly for her racing pulse. Warehouse fire, corrupt official criminal conspiracy. No one can bury this now. The evidence is scattered to too many places, like seeds in the wind. Distant sirens grow closer as they move through the warehouse, their wailing cutting through the night. Emergency lights paint everything in surreal red and shadow, turning familiar objects into alien landscapes. Smoke from the breaching charges hangs in the air like morning fog, cut by neon from street signs bleeding through the high windows, casting eerie blue-pink stripes across the floor. A shadow detaches from a doorway 30 feet ahead, a shooter trying to flank their position, weapon already raised. Before Cade can pivot, his second-in-command drops from an overhead catwalk, taking the threat down with two precise shots that echo in the cavernous space. The body hits concrete with a dull thud, the gun skittering across the floor with a metallic scrape. They reach the convoy at 1:02 a.m., 3 identical black SUVs with engines already running, exhaust creating ghostly plumes in the cold night air. As they pull away, tires crunching on gravel, Monroe watches through tinted windows as police units swarm the property, light bars painting everything in blue and red pulses. Task force vehicles with federal markings block the exits. agents in windbreakers, spilling out with weapons drawn. Through the chaos, she sees them dragging out a familiar figure, her stepfather's fixer, the man who'd ordered the warehouse torched to destroy evidence, now in handcuffs and looking considerably less polished than in his press conference photos, his expensive suit stained with dirt and what might be blood. The drive back to the lake estate passes in comfortable silence, broken only by occasional radio chatter from Cade's security team. Monroe drifts in and out of consciousness, exhaustion washing over her in waves now that adrenaline fades from her system. Cade's hand rests on her knee, thumb moving in small circles against the torn fabric of her jeans. A gesture more for his comfort than hers, an assurance that she's really there, really safe. Dawn breaks over the lake at 5:11 a.m., painting the sky in watercolor pinks and golds that reflect off the still water like a mirror. Monroe is barely awake as Cade lifts her from the car, cradling her against his chest as though she weighs nothing. She presses her face into his neck, breathing in gunpowder and expensive cologne and something uniquely him, clean sweat and something like cedar. They're both bone-tired, dark circles beneath their eyes, but sleep feels distant and unimportant. Something fundamental has shifted between them in the span of a single night. The violence and tenderness of the hours spent in darkness have burned away any pretense, leaving them raw and honest and utterly awake to what they've become to each other. Not captor and captive, not protector and protected, but something with no easy name. Cade carries her through the estate's repaired door, past evidence of the earlier fight now cleared away, though Monroe notices a new painting where bullets had scarred the wall. His arms don't shake despite the long night and the weight of her body. His heartbeat under her ear is steady and strong, a metronome keeping perfect time. The house is quiet except for their breathing and soft footsteps across hardwood and plush carpet. Early morning light streams through lakeside windows, turning everything golden and soft at the edges. It feels surreal after the darkness of the warehouse, this peaceful moment carved out of chaos, a pocket of stillness after the storm. Monroe's fingers curl into Cade's shirt, the expensive fabric bunching in her grip as he climbs the stairs toward the bedroom wing. She's safe. They both are. The evidence is out, the corruption exposed, and they've survived the night. But more than that, they've found something neither expected. A connection forged in danger and sealed in trust. Something that feels both fragile and unbreakable in the same breath. The sun continues its slow rise over the lake, golden light spilling across the water and through the windows, marking the end of the longest night and the beginning of something new. Something neither of them had seen coming, but now seems inevitable as the dawn itself. 3 weeks pass like water over stones, each day washing away more traces of the violence that brought them here. The lake house becomes their sanctuary, a place where danger feels distant and healing happens in quiet moments. Monroe watches from the deck as fall paints the shoreline in amber and gold. Her ribs no longer ache, and the bruises have faded to memory. Inside, her attorney works through careful depositions, crafting a statement that protects her privacy while ensuring justice moves forward. The Orsini fixer's arrest sparked a cascade of indictments, each one cutting closer to City Hall, to her stepfather's manicured world of fake philanthropy and real corruption. She develops her photos in a makeshift darkroom Cade had built in the basement. The simple art of capture and development helps her reclaim control, one frame at a time. Sometimes he watches from the doorway, silent and protective, as she works with chemicals and light. Cade moves through these weeks like a man rebuilding an empire from stronger materials. He cuts away rot with surgical precision. Every traitor who helped Rocco, every weak link that could have cost him Monroe. His operation emerges leaner, harder, roots secured with the kind of paranoid attention that comes from nearly losing everything. They find their rhythms in domestic moments, coffee at sunrise, quiet dinners, nights when thunder rolls across the lake and neither of them flinches at the sound anymore. Monroe learns to sleep through the night again, safe in the knowledge that Cade's protection is absolute. He learns to let his guard down, but only with her, only in their private space where tenderness doesn't equal weakness. On this clear afternoon, autumn sun turning the lake to diamonds, Cade takes her hand and leads her to the restored dock. It's 4:36 p.m., and the air holds that golden quality that makes everything feel suspended in amber. The boards are new, no trace remaining of the night when storm and passion changed everything. Monroe's bare feet feel the smooth wood as they walk to the end. Wind plays with her hair, carrying the scent of pine and late flowers. Cade stops at the edge where water meets wood, turns to face her with an expression she's never seen before, something raw and certain. He takes her hands in his, those lethal fingers gentle as they've only ever been with her. The ring appears like magic, platinum catching light. It's elegant and strong, like everything about him, with tiny security features worked into the design that only she would notice. Protection wrapped in beauty. His voice is low, meant only for her ears, as he makes vows he'll never speak to another soul. The world can have his fury, his calculation, his necessary violence, but she gets everything else. The quiet moments, the careful touches, the soft words spoken in darkness. She gets the man behind the armor, the heart he trusts only to her keeping. Monroe's smile blooms slow and real, tasting freedom in the way he looks at her. When she kisses him, it carries echoes of that first storm-swept night, but without the desperate edge of uncertainty. Now there's just the clean taste of possibility, of futures opening like flowers. They talk quietly of plans while boats drift past in the distance. Her photography will be hers alone, no more night shifts handling other people's art. She'll document beauty instead of evidence, create instead of preserve. And his violence will remain a weapon pointed outward, never touching the sanctuary they've built together. Evening settles over the lake as they move to the deck for dinner. It's 7:12 p.m. when Monroe's phone lights up with breaking news. The first guilty plea has been entered, a domino falling that will bring down more. The fixer's facade has cracked, spilling secrets that will eventually reach her stepfather's polished doorstep. Cade's hand covers hers on the table, warm and solid. His touch carries the weight of promise, that she'll never face threats alone again, that his protection will be as relentless as his love is absolute. The devotion that made him vulnerable has become their strength, dangerous to everyone except each other. The lake darkens to liquid silver, reflecting stars as they begin to appear. Their wine glasses catch the last light, casting ruby shadows on white linen. Everything feels possible in this moment. Justice without exposure, love without fear, protection without cage bars. Monroe studies their joined hands, his scarred knuckles next to her artist's fingers, the ring catching starlight. It's a perfect metaphor for them. Beauty and strength, softness and steel, all wrapped together in an unbreakable circle. The evening wraps around them like silk, peaceful in a way neither thought possible weeks ago. Crickets start their evening chorus from the shoreline. A loon calls. Across the water, its cry haunting and free. The motion-activated security lights click on softly, creating a gentle perimeter of warmth. Their dinner grows cold, forgotten in favor of this quiet communion. Words feel unnecessary when every touch carries such clear meaning. Monroe traces the line of Cade's jaw, memorizing him in this gentle mood that belongs to her alone. His eyes hold that dangerous softness that no one else will ever see, the look that says she owns every part of him not given to survival and empire. The lake house lights reflect on the water like scattered gems, creating a private universe where past violence can't touch them. Here, in this space they've carved out of chaos, they've found something rare, a love strong enough to survive bullets and betrayal, tender enough to heal old wounds, and dangerous only to those who would try to break it.